accountability, and youth participation in Africa's democratic landscape. As I mentioned before, this is a great space to have these conversations, to find out how can young people be involved more in democracy and what is the direction that we want to head to. I know we've heard this saying many times that if you don't do politics, if you're not involved in governance, then the outcome is you'll be affected mostly. So today I'm going to be joined and we're going to hear from different speakers, beginning with Honorable Edem Agbana. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Member of Parliament, Ketu North, Republic of Ghana, who will be sharing with us some tips and skills for strengthening youth representation in Africa's political institutions. And then we're also going to listen from Miss Patience Namanya. She is a diplomat and will maybe explain more on which aspect. But she'll be talking about women in leadership, creating inclusive youth governance spaces. And then we're going to have Mr. Tony Olela. He's the founder and executive director of Africare, who will be speaking on civic engagement and accountability among African youth. And then we're also going to hear from Mr. Ezekiel Nzuki, the Secretary, Pan-African Organization for Peace and Conflict Resolution. Basically, we'll be tapping into peace, democracy, and the role of youth in conflict prevention. Lastly, we shall listen from Mr. Dennis Nene, who's going to be talking. He's the country president, African Young Leaders Foundation, Kenya, and we'll be talking about the effect of Kenyan's Gen Z movements in advancing democracy. And of course, a Q&A session. So the speakers, if you can shorten your speeches to about 5-7 minutes or something like that, so we can have enough time to converse and really talk about what we think about governance, accountability, and youth participation in African democratic landscape. Is Honorable Edem Agbana with us here? Rejoin. Is here? If you are, you can just turn on your mic and say a bit of a greeting, and then we can continue. Or maybe we can start with Patience Namanya. Patience, you're welcome. I can see you're here. How are you? How's everything? If you can turn on your mic, even your camera if you can. Patience, are you with us?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay.
How are you? Oh, perfect. There you are.
Can you see me?
I'm great. I'm great.
Okay. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning from wherever you are on the African continent. It's honestly a pleasure to be on this panel. And I'd like to start my conversation with a quote by Dr. Dlamini. If we do not put women in history books, they get edited out of history. And when we think of that quote, we have to reflect on an estimated 759 million African women on our continent that are at risk of being edited out of history. So how can we then reform that? You know, as young women who are going to be probably leading in different spaces, or as young women who are affected by these policies that are not adequately addressing our different issues. We need to look at the fabrics of our African society. What really defines inclusion? Is it cultural norms, religious beliefs? But I think one of the most overriding factors, it's economic interests of both citizens and leaders. We have a number of policies adopted by African leaders that enhance inclusivity on the African continent. We have the Agenda 2063, specifically aspirations 6 and 4 that look at equal representation, youth quotas in governance and entrepreneurship. The African Youth Charter that mandates gender responsive policies. And we have countries like Rwanda that have actually followed these policies and have their youth councils advising their government on policy designs. But unfortunately, 42 out of our 55 African states haven't ratified the Youth Charter. And where does that leave the young people in those countries? We have the Maputo Protocol that requires states to ensure that 30% of women are in decision-making roles. While in Senegal and Namibia, they have exceeded 40%. But unfortunately, 15 African member states haven't ratified this protocol. So I think with this context in mind, we can see that Africa has frameworks for inclusive governance. Africa recognizes there's a gender parity. Africa recognizes its youth need to be included in governance. But where is the missing link, right? What is stopping us from getting there? I think it's us properly understanding what economically empowering African women and youth mean. How does this really contribute to sustainable development? We have policies in place in some of our countries that give girls the right to access education. In Uganda, we have universal free education. We have, multinational institutions going into remote settings and supporting education. But let's go back to the fabrics of our society, cultural norms. We have communities, even in Kenya, where children, girls as young as 8, are being given as child brides, robbing them of a future, or possibly even being enrolled in education because they become young mothers. And when we look at inclusive governance, the local leaders in these communities keep silent. Why? Because they don't want to lose their political seats. And that continues to disempower young women in those communities. We have policies that enhance women's participation in entrepreneurship. Yes, we've heard of the African Continental Free Trade Area. And we have so many, projects on building women's capacity to trade at the continental level. However, women in agriculture are frustrated by middlemen who, once again, look through the policy loopholes and pay them 30 to 50% below their market value, limiting their ability to purchase high-value seeds, fertilizers, and most importantly, be economically independent. We need to recognize these practices in our society that continue to steal the dignity, security, and resilience of African women. Many rural African women today are still victims of land ownership rights, influenced by cultural norms that favor men. Land inheritance laws in our countries have loose loopholes that continue to disempower our mothers and grandmothers and possibly future, young women in our communities. The reinforcement of cultural beliefs like FGM and child marriages, even with the presence of African Union guidelines preventing violence against women and girls. You can go, to your local police station. I've seen this even in Uganda, and cases of domestic violence, of trauma, of rape, will go unattended to due to gender biases by police officials or corruption perpetrated by predators. So when we go back to the economic potential of women and what AfTA presents to women, increased market access, reduced trade barriers, but we have to also realize that 70% of Africa's informal trade is dominated by women. And yet, so many high-value market countries require certification, packaging, logistics, and women just don't have access to funding to boost their businesses to this level. And I speak of especially this example confidently because I've represented over 15,000 women entrepreneurs in Uganda in negotiations on trade. And it goes back to, yes, there are trade policies that say women are welcome, women can do this. But when you go to the banking institutions, when you go to the money lenders, their policies don't align with these policies. So what do we need? I think we need to empower the next generation of young women and to empower the women who are already in place, gender responsive policies that are coherent. And what does that mean? Policies that recognize the diversity of all African women in their different contexts. I'll give an example. Like the one I just stated, we have trade policies in place that enhance women's participation. But did you know that 60% of African countries lack legal protections to prevent women from being discriminated against when they go and access credit? So if we can ensure policy coherence at the government level and private sector level, we can be able to economically empower women. Okay, we need to increase women's representation in parliament, in local government, in order to ensure that gender sensitive policies are actually passed and recommended. And most importantly, we need to advocate for gender sensitive budgeting, which in most African countries is below 5% of national spending. And I think if we can focus on gender sensitive budgeting, we can allocate the right resources to cover the different challenges that continue to face women in the African continent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patience. That is very valid. And just before listening to all the, I know people can call them statistics, but then
Yeah.
as a woman, so that people can get experience, like in your experience, what are some of the structural barriers or most agent things that need to be dismantled in order to allow women to lead, especially young women? Like in your position, what are some of the barriers you had to go through? You know, most people say it's easier said than done. So maybe you can share your experiences as well. Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that. And to answer that question, I'd reflect on my experience mentoring girls under Project Girls for Girls, where we mentor women of diverse backgrounds. And I'm going to touch on the corporate cohorts because right now I'm leading mentorship of young women under the East African crude oil pipeline. And even in these corporate spaces, it is what in Girls for Girls we call sticky floors. The words, the cultural ideas that have been reinforced in young women since a young age. Even when you do get into leadership positions, you will get into the boardroom and they say, because you're the only woman, and this is a C-suite boardroom, you're going to make tea. But no, she is at that level where she's not supposed to be making tea. There's someone for that, but because you're the only woman in the room, they're going to say she's supposed to make tea. So I think one of the biggest issues we need to help young women with is disassociating themselves from the sticky floors that have been given to us from our parents, our societies, and even negative connotations we see within our communities. I think another thing that needs to be put in place is quotas, because they exist on paper, but within government structures, within offices, when you walk into offices, when you walk into interviews, when you walk into boardrooms, it's not reflected into reality. And that's why we have so many women still pushing and trying to reinforce policy into practice to ensure that women have equal representation in different sectors.
Thank you so much for that. I really love how you say disassociate yourself from the sticky floors. So basically, you're trying to ask us to break the glass ceiling. Trying to encourage young women, young leaders, even women in general, just to understand that those things exist and disassociate yourself from them and not just settling and tolerating that. So that's a very valid point. Thank you so much for sharing. And just a reminder to everyone joining us, thank you so much for joining. If you have your questions on what the speakers are saying, please do jot them down. We're going to have a Q&A later on, and you can introduce yourself in the chats as well. Let us connect. So just connecting to what you were talking about, Patience, you also mentioned saying that Africa recognizes the need for young people to be in governance and democracy. So I'd like to hear from Mr. Dennis Nene, if you're with us, the country president, African Young Leaders Foundation, Kenya. What are the effects of Kenya's Gen Z movement in advancing democracy? Because yes, we feel like the Africa is saying that they really would love young people to be involved in democracy, in governance. But if you can share your experiences and also just talk about what are the effects of Gen Z, really moving democracy. Mr. Dennis, if you're here, kindly turn on your mic and you can say hello, introduce yourself, and you can go on. Dennis, Nene, I can see you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I didn't see that coming very fast, but well and good. We will just proceed and get to really know the effect of the Gen Z movement in advancing democracy, not only in Kenya, but also in the continent of Africa. So, ladies and gentlemen, comrades, wherever you're joining in from, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. From where you're joining in, I'm joining in from Kenya, East Africa, in Africa. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just get into this. When I saw the conversation on Gen Z movement, the effect of Gen Z is easy, but I thought it should be like a conversation that we're having instead of just giving like a lecture or just a conversation, a speech on it. But well, those around or those around in the continent have heard of the Kenyan Gen Zs who now have taken into their account to go far and beyond the borders of the continent. And just to let you know and understand about the Gen Z, although these called the Gen Zs, these are mostly the young people who are below the ages of out in especially last year during the finance bill in June 2024. And it pick up on June 25th last year, where we had the mother of all demonstrations happening in Kenya. And it was so uncertain and unfortunate that we lost quite a number of them. I speak because I was part of the demonstrations. Yeah, we call them Andamano in Kenya. And we went to the streets, we took onto the social media and organized community forums. And these are people who are very bold and they are still very bold. They are tech savvy and they are deeply conscious about their rights. So it's very, very, very hard, and it's giving it and for the government even to control them. But where do we begin? Looking at the democracy of where should we be and where is this Gen Z movement taking us in regards to the democracy? I think we should reflect to these two individuals who are very, I know most of us are conversant with them. That is Thomas Sankara and Mwalimu Julius Nyerere of Tanzania. Allow me just to read what these two great gentlemen say. And Thomas said that the true liberation of the continent or of a nation begins once of the future of their nation. And then Nyerere comes in and nails it in there. As we must educate these young people because they are continent and which they begin. But I believe that what we took into account from last year, and many people thought the finance bill and just come in from nowhere and just led it for the first time in Kenya. I think the awakening that happened last year has really turned on the conversation of democracy, the conversation of civic engagement within the continent. One of the contributions or one of the effect of the democracy of the Gen Z movement to democracy as as a trend to the rising of the digital mobilization. And those of us who are active knows something that has happened recently also within the East Africa from the influence of the Kenyans with our neighbors within the East. And this really, the use of the TikTok, the YouTube, those of us know memes, and within the media that have been used by the young people. And then after that, not only settling on the media, on the social media, we've gone far and beyond, and then began reclaiming the civic spaces. And that has really enhanced even the conversation on democracy or what the government ought to put across to the citizens. Because when in the regard of democracy, is not what we've been experiencing so long ago. I think things have really changed in a dramatic nature within the last, even not an year that has concluded, but things have really changed where you see the Gen Z getting involved in political disillusionment that is involving the government policies within the parliament, within the politics of their own nations. And now you're seeing these Gen Zs have gone far and beyond and deciding to go even to quote unquote to liberate other African countries within their reach. And this was taken into something that is very key, that is inspiring cross-generational solidarity. And this is we have begun seeing a conversation, that is intergenerational conversations happening here in Kenya. Because when you see not the president getting even to engage with farmers, he has now decided to always call someone who is of a young age or what they would refer to as the Gen Z. We all know that might not fall under the Gen Z, but something that is a representative of the Gen Z so that the conversation can be able to take place. But why was this not happening? Because that is the question. Did we not have the democracy? For example, in Kenya, we more than 60 years of independence, and we've been claiming that we've been in democracy since our second president and the fighting against all that, the appealing of Section 2A of the Constitution to put the democracy and the multi-party, all those things. But have we been a silent nation till last year when we had the finance bill that rekindled this movement to come forth and forward and fight for its own people? In as much as we've seen these are happening and the young people are awakening, there's been so many challenges. But what we can be able to appreciate is that we've been able to see many young people also rise in politics. Some of them I won't be able to mention them here, but we've been able to see even the National Youth Council and so many other forums come up and rise and form to formulate policies, to come up with bills to submit to the parliament, to be very vibrant, even when the parliament is going on nowadays, not previously, following parliament proceedings was the job of the older people, of our fathers, those people of 60, 70. But now the young people know what was happening very early morning today in the Senate. And they've been following up to see what's happening. Because right now we're also in another finance bill that is still going on. People are submitting their views. So this was not happening before. We can just see, we can just hear something happened. No one knew what had happened. But now they are very cautious. But in as much as that there is that cautious and we've been able to see it's also spreading across, then I think this does not need only to sit at this moment, because we need to be able to see that we come up together and we merge these forces together and be able to ensure that these, what I usually refer to as the total emancipation of our continent or of our country, so that we can be able to really enjoy what our forefathers really fought for against the Europeans or against the colonizers, so that we don't see what is happening. Like this, the other effect, which is very negative, is and these are among the challenges. We're seeing the arrests, the misinformation that is happening, the regulation of the social medias, which is not targeted, which is not targeted to the older people, but targeted to this rising, very innovative generation, or the Gen Z or the young people. So we've been able to see this, but all these challenges again, they also offer us an opportunity to see what do we need to come up with or be more creatively or innovative to see that we are able to tap into these threats and these challenges. Like we're seeing more young people, like the memes which I mentioned earlier, they're tapping into that, coming up with um, very well curated songs that really are alive to all the people, all the generations around, and put across their messages in as much as they will put it in funny way, but they are putting up their message very clearly, and it's very good. The memes as well, and this has forced the government even to respond to the memes. How would the whole government that is dealing with so many other things clearly respond to the memes? So I think the Gen Z has really taken into account of even calling the government to accountability, and also the part of holding the government accountable and demanding integrity. Chapter 6 of our constitution usually focuses on integrity and leadership at it. And one of the things that I would also emphasize the many young people who are here is because this political landscape is, we are the ones who will be able to take it over, but we can't just inherit this political landscape the way it is. We must be able to be people of values and stand true to the right values of our society, so that we can be able to turn around what is happening. So in as much as we're getting involved in politics, in
Yeah.
political shifts, yes, let's be able to do that. And for those around in Kenya, we are up on that. We formed a political liberation movement that we coming up and instilling these values to our young people and ensuring that we not only we take it up with values and ensure that we change and we turn all things around. So thank you so much,
Yeah.
Madam Moderator.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dennis, for walking us through that. I think it's very commendable work. Most of the young people, I can say, worldwide were really impressed. It really did turbo change and, the thinking of the elder generation. And there was so much to think about. Kudos to everyone who's involved. If there's any Kenyans in this meeting right now, and I think I speak for everyone who said it was inspiring, but you really do set the tone for our next speaker, Mr. Ezekiel Zuki. If you're around, we were talking about during the protests, the change for the finance bill, people had died, blood was shed, and we wish it would have turned out a different way. And Mr. Ezekiel, when we talk about governance, accountability, and participation of young people in democracy, and I would just like you to talk about peace, democracy, and the role of youth in conflict prevention, and maybe also touch based on maybe how it would have been better to have peaceful protests, but then things had happened, and we wouldn't want that to happen everywhere else. We love that the young people got their way, but how can we incorporate peace and also maybe the type of protest? You hear comments, people saying they were protesting in such a rude way, but then we don't think so. I mean, that should never be a grounds for killing somebody. So maybe if Mr. Ezekiel, if you're here, you can just turn on your mic and feel free to introduce yourself and really discuss on peace, democracy, and the role of youth in conflict prevention. You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Ian. Can you also see me?
Yes, we can see you. And we can hear you as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, I'm going to be short and precise. I'm going to speak on peace, democracy, and the role of youth in conflict prevention. Well, as the secretary of a Pan-African organization, and that is the Pan-African Organization for Peace and Conflict Resolution, abbreviated as OPPRC. Well, I don't just believe in the role of youth, but rather I've seen youth leading where policies seems not to make some sense. And so I have a strong belief in the youth. Well, because of time, I'm going to be short and precise. I think I'm just going to define the terms. Then probably next time we can pick it from there. And I believe in our virtual meeting, our next virtual meeting, I mean. Well, allow me to begin by quoting a Nairobian Uber driver. Well, that is a taxi driver. I'm not going to quote Barack Obama for now, nor am I going to quote Nelson Mandela, but allow me to quote a Nairobian Uber driver who said, "Young man, listen, if young people talk about change, then old people talk about patience. The country needs both, that is, the young and old. But he said, please, in life, we need to try faster." That is a quote from a Nairobian Uber driver. Uber driver simply means a
Mr.
taxi driver
Ezekiel,
from Kenya.
Mr.
And so
Ezekiel,
I
if you can position your microphone a bit, we lost you for a bit. So maybe you can, yeah. If it's an internet network situation, maybe you can turn off your camera. That's also fine. Yeah.
okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Let me proceed. Okay, let me pick it again from where I left from. I said that I'm going to speak on peace, democracy, and the role of youth in conflict prevention. And I said, as a secretary of the Pan African Organization for Peace and Conflict Resolution, I have seen youth lead. I have seen youth come into action where policies seems to fail. And I said I'm going to quote someone like Nelson Mandela. I'm not going to quote Barack Obama, but rather I'm going to quote a Nairobian Uber driver. A Nairobian Uber driver simply means a taxi driver. And I say that he once told me that, young man, listen, that if young people can talk about change, then old people ought or should talk about patience, and the country needs both. But he said, please drive faster in life. And dear friends, allow me to begin by just defining the terms. Based on the time, I'm just going to define the terms. Maybe next time we can pick it from there. I'm going to define peace. I'm going to define democracy. I'm going to define youth and also conflict prevention in the context of OPPRC. Because I said I'm the secretary of a Pan African Organization for Peace and Conflict Resolution. So allow me to just define the terms for today in the context of OPPRC. Well, we say that peace is not that act of slapping someone or not just slapping someone when you strongly want to. But in the context of OPPRC, we say that peace, it is when justice makes sense, even when hunger is necessary. Sometimes when justice makes, well, I send your message, when justice makes sense, when anger is necessary. That is how we define peace. How do we define democracy in the context of OPPRC? Well, because most of the time people think in the line of voting, We say that democracy in when your opinions matter even after the day of voting. That is in the context of OPPLC. What about youth? How do we define youth in the context of OPPLC? We say, well, that is the phase when even when you are broke, you are still bold enough. Well, you are unemployed, but you remain unstoppable. That group is what we define as youth. Well, what is conflict resolution? Or what is conflict prevention in the context of OPPRC? We say that is basically the Wi Fi of peace. In other words, when it works, no one seems to notice, but well, when it crashes, all of us we tend to notice. That is how we define conflict resolution. Why does this matter? And also, what should we do? Well, allow me to say that I'm going to quote a local man from South Africa, in fact, a community leader from South Africa, from the villages there, who said that when youth stop fighting for space, and in that space they use it to start farming, well, peace will become food and not just theory. And that's why in the OPPRC we say that we work with a vision, a mission, and strategy in life. Well, we say our mission is one, our vision is also one, and also strategy is one. But that is where now we get the difference when we speak of strategy. So, well, you understand when we talk of youth and when we talk of peace, when we talk of conflict prevention, basically we can draw that to our vision, we can draw that to our mission. But what about the strategy? Well, in OPPRC, we say just one simple thing, dear friends, and as I close, that do what you can do to make difference in life. That is it. Do what you can do to make difference in life. If you want to promote peace, you want to see the role of youth, whatever you want to do, whether you are promoters of change or not, what you are supposed to do, you and me. In the context of OPPRC, we say that do what you can do to make a difference in life. I repeat again, do what you can do to make a difference in life. As a close, or PPLC, we say that youth are not leaders of tomorrow, nor are we leaders of today. We partly disagree with that. We say that we are leaders right now. And so peace is our platform. And that brings me to the close. Do what you can do to make a difference in life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ezekiel, for those inputs on peace and security, and also for breaking it down, just letting us understand the nitty-gritty parts of it. So I just want to remind everyone that we're having a Q&A session soon, and please do jot down your questions that you have. This is very interesting, but it's much more interesting if we talk about it all together. What do you think about governance, accountability, and youth participation in Africa's democratic landscape? Is this a myth? Is it a reality? What do you think about women inclusion? What do you think about peace and democracy? All those aspects. And taking on what do you also think about, civic engagement? So to tap into that, I'd like to invite Mr. Tony Olela. He's the founder and executive director of Africare, and he'll be speaking about civic engagement and accountability among African youth. So you have about 5 minutes so that everyone else can ask their questions as well, chip in, and maybe recommendations, and even share some best practices and experiences as well. So Mr. Tony, you are welcome. You can turn on your mic and your camera as well.
Hi, Kaponi, how are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you? We can hear
Uh,
you very well.
I'm good. I believe I'm audible enough. I don't know if you're sure you really want me to take 5 minutes in such an amazing youth setup, but I only stand the guide after running all the way to just settle in to have this presentation. So I'll respect the fact that you mentioned 5 minutes, but you'll add me a little bit of 2 to 3 to make it 7. But you can
No
make this.
problem. But remember, no problem. There's going to be many questions coming up. So yeah, 5 to 7, that will be okay. Over to you.
All right, thank you so much. Because you already given a brief introduction of who I am, and I'm going to really take up this so that we make it quite interesting. Allow me to present my screen so that we, okay. Please tell me if you can see my screen. I don't know if it's up.
No, we can see it. Can see your screen.
Okay. What about now?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
All right. So thank you so much once again for having me in this amazing conversation about young people. Most when it comes to empowering youths, in line with civic engagement and accountability among African youths. So as you can see on my screen, it's all about getting started, and getting started is only just one step ahead. The question is, what are we, and rather, how ready are we to take this steps towards civic engagement and even focusing into accountability as young people? Being that I have 5 minutes, I'll have to rush to take this a bit fast so that we get into the Q&A session as you've just mentioned. So just to get started, this is just a brief about myself and what I do. My name is Olula Tony. Professionally, I'm a gender expert, child protection and SIL advocate, and also a founder and ED to Africa, which is a youth-led non-profit organization focusing on solid building of community towards social protection. So just to jump on how do we define civic engagement? And I'd appreciate getting some responses on the comment section, even as we kickstart our conversation. So the question is, what is civic engagement? So civic engagement refers to an individual or a collective action that addresses issues of public concern. And this action requires your responsibility, your commitment, your passion in ensuring that we hold ourselves and even the political bodies accountable. So for civic engagement, it plays a vital role more so when young people take part in it, because it revolves around shaping up the society, especially being that the young people are the majority in number in Africa. Because through civic engagement, we find ourselves as young people that we contribute in meaningfully to accountability, democracy, and even inclusive development within our different settings in African context. So it takes up a role between you and I to ensure that we hold our leaders accountable without any form of allowing ourselves to be lured in any manner. And there's so many activities that involve civic engagement. And this starts by being volunteers in these different spaces, participating in election. For example, giving a context to Kenya, how ready are we as young people to register as voters, to register into different political movements, to ensure that we participate actively in election. Also engaging in public participation, that is something that's very, very important for us. And also the maximizing of the digital platforms like social media. When we all engage in this, indeed, it empowers us as young people to shape our policies, even hold our leaders accountable, and even build our communities. And now, to factor in the issue about accountability, guys, see how heavy it is. The question is, what does accountability really mean in the context of development and civic engagement? So, accountability, you can give it a definition depending with your own understanding, but this means ensuring that our leaders and institutions are answerable to the people whom they serve. And this involves, one, transparency, responsibility and responsiveness towards the work that they are doing. And we as young people can play a very critical role as watchdogs or other whistleblowers when it comes to holding our leaders accountable. Now, quick on track. Wow, 5 minutes. All right. Now, why civic engagement? Why is it important? First of all, it helps to strengthen our democracy, the democratic institutions. It also helps to promote inclusive development within our work. And what are the barriers towards this? There's limited access to civic education, which might be facilitated by political or other like cultural challenges. There's also an aspect of poverty and also the fear of government backlash. Now in Kenya, I know most of you are in Kenya, you understand what is happening. When you come out and speak out and even challenge a political individual, you might either get yourself being under behind the bars, or just being in a situation that you can't really control. So what are some of the enablers? And if you are listening as a young person, these are some of the key enablers that work best for us to hold our leaders accountable. One is the access to digital platforms, and these are some of the tools that we use as young people to ensure that that the information goes out. We also have youth innovation hubs, mentorship programs, and also the supportive legal and policy environment that promote youth participation in decision making. And I can't just leave this communication without talking about the role of social media, rather the role of the digital space. What is the role of digital media when it comes to issues advocating for rather being engaging in civic participation? So the first thing, social media and digital tools have given us a very good platform to participate in the civic life. We use social media to organize ourselves as young people, share information, hold public official accounts accountable, and even educate our peers about the issues of development within our communities. The question is, what role, or rather, how are you harnessing social media, or rather, the digital space as a young person to ensure that whatever information that you're passing out, indeed, it is bringing a positive impact on our people. Now, even as we come to a close of this conversation, a quick reflection. What actions can you take as an individual to promote civic engagement and accountability in your community or institution? Just take a minute or a second to think about that. What can you do as an individual to ensure that you promote the civic engagement and accountability? You can share your responses on the comment section, but the question is, what next for us as Africans? Yeah. So to deepen civic engagement, to deepen civic and accountability, stakeholders should integrate civic learning into education systems, provide funding for youth initiatives, and also include young people in governance structures, budgeting, and ensure safe spaces for free expression and participation. Dear delegates, even as I come to a closure, this is just as a word from me to you guys. It is essential that we rise as African great leaders, participate, and hold institutions accountable. Let us all be proactive in promoting change and creating the future that we want. And this starts with you and I being so intentional towards civic engagement and accountability. Thank you so much. And that was my time with you guys. Over and back to you, Madam Moderator. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tony. You actually managed your time very well. You were worried, and we can see the passion about civic engagement that you have from them. Thank you for this presentation and for those points. One thing that really stood out for me is you saying that young people, they're asking us the question of why is it important for us to be, involved, take accountability. I like that saying that says if you don't do politics, politics will do you. So most of the times, young people, we complain, oh, I wish this person had won, or I wish this was this way. But are you a part of the process? What are you doing to be a part of the process? So that's really valid. Are you going to vote, or are you sitting at home and waiting for the results to come out and then you complain? Maybe that one vote, which is yours, could have changed the game. So it's all about that accountability and responsibility. And I really love that. And now I'd like to open it up to the floor. If there's anyone who has a question, you can just raise your hand. And Tony, thank you so much for sharing your screen. Yeah. If anyone has any question, you can direct it to any of the speakers. Just a bit of a recap. We had listened from Ms. Patience Namanya. She's a diplomat, and she was talking about women in leadership. And one thing that stood out is how we can dissociate ourselves from the sticky floors and really break the glass ceilings in governance spaces. And we're just from listening to Mr. Toli Olela, who's really talking about how we can get involved. Accountability starts with ourselves. You're not waiting for someone to wake you up and say, young people, be involved. So how can we acknowledge that we need to be a part of civic engagement? And of course, we listened to Mr. Ezekiel, who was talking about peace and democracy and the role of youth in conflict prevention, and Mr. Dennis Nene, who had shared some of the experiences and, of young people who really understood their rights and were voicing out their concerns and being a part of the process to make change. So if there are any questions, any comments, any recommendations, if you have an experience to share, maybe of a time when you felt that there is a real need for young people to be accountable and to take part in these spaces, you can just raise your hand and the floor is yours. Of course, you can introduce yourself and you can direct the question or the comments to whoever you are directing it to. The floor is open. I can see multiple people here. Welcome, welcome. I can see Alice. I can see Rashidi. I can see Mohammed. I can see Angela. I can see so many people. Eva, you're welcome. Are there any questions on governance? Yeah. I guess whilst they are thinking about that, maybe we can have one point of view from each of the speakers. Like, what is one thing you'd like young people to take away from this platform? One thing you'd like to see change, especially in governance and youth inclusion? Patience, I'll start with you, and then I'll go to Dennis and the rest. One thing you'd like to see change, yeah, and one word of advice you have maybe to the young people.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity again. I think one thing I'd like, it's not in line with my presentation, but just a thought I'd like young people on this call to leave with is the idea of using alliances as a form of strategy for youth engagement and youth advocacy, because we see so many young people with the same projects. Everyone, very many people have a project that's similar in climate change. You have projects that are similar in gender equality, but we keep saying we don't have access to resources, we're not being engaged by the government. But if we work together, and let's say you're in climate change and you see someone is doing something in migration and climate change, someone else is doing something about financing humanitarian issues in climate change, you can come together, put your organizations together and work together. And that way we're stronger together, because we're pulling the little resources we have to champion something we're all passionate about. But we have so many young people working in silos. And I think for us to advance the different conversations we've had today, we need to connect even across borders. The conversation here today is due to collaborations like that. So I want young people to walk away today with the idea that we are stronger together, and collaborations start in rooms like this. See anyone on this call, send them a message and say, hi, what are you doing? How can we collaborate? Thank you again.
That is amazing. Thank you so much, Patience. I really love how you're talking about coalitions, impact coalitions. We're really working in silos when you can find that the solution you're looking for is in another country, a continent, or maybe even another community, or somebody's organization is already doing what you're trying to do. So how can you maximize efforts by coming together? And we complain about resources. Very valid. That's a very good point. And Mr. Dennis Nene, what's one thing you'd like to share to young people, seeing as you're so young as well, and the movement? How can you, what one last word do you have to young people about accountability and, being bold as well?
Okay, thank you. Thank you once again, Madam Kapwani. So for the young people, and this has really been my emphasis, for those who are looking towards halting a political change, they must be actively also involved in political movements. That means they must organize politically so that they can be able to disintegrate whatever is there or whatever is happening politically. So if we are really to alter it, then we must agree, or we must really commit ourselves to engage politically and also to organize politically. So one very key thing is the young people must begin. They must not wait to be told to organize. They must begin now and organize politically wherever you are. And that way we'll be able to alter the necessary change. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that word of advice and very valid as well. And I'd like to welcome Mr. Tony. One last word that you have for the young people, especially on civic engagement, accountability, and your experiences as well. Just something brief, something you can share.
What I can say is I will never have one word to young people. But what I can say is young people should own it up and get started. Because if we wait, then the next generation will suffer. So let's start now. Let's collaborate just as Patience has put it out. Let's ensure that we work together as African. Let us break these pseudo borders to ensure that we become one nation, one Africa, one nation. So I think that's my last word for the young people. And just to pass a greeting to Patience. Patience, one of my mentees knows you a lot. He's called Ronald Jaoko. He wants to work together with him. He has just passed his regards to you. Thank you, and back to you, Kapwani.
Thank you so much. I really love what you're saying. Just start, don't procrastinate too much about it. Take efforts to start. And once you start, of course, things start to pan out. You meet the right people, you meet the right resources, and that is very interesting. So I'd also like to invite Mr. Ezekiel, if you have any any words to share. I don't want, like Tony said it best, not last words, but maybe any words to share on, governance, accountability, and youth and democracy landscape in Africa.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, Ms. Jasmine, allow me to just introduce my president, if you so allow me to just say one word. The only word that I can say is that I'm looking forward to a day when youth will be invited before decisions are made. I'm looking forward to a day when youth will be invited before decisions are made. Allow me at this moment to introduce Mr. Abdulwai Falati, the president of OPPLC, to just say one word on my PR. I believe I've said one, but two in one can be better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You're welcome, Mr. Abdullahi. Yeah, you're welcome to say hi, and you can feel free to chip into the conversation on governance, accountability, and youth participation in Africa's democratic landscape. You can turn on your mic and your camera if you can.
Good morning, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you for these opportunities. And OPPRC, we are ready. we are ready to take off. Just we need some pilot to be with us to drive our plane to land it in the peace area and to land it with all the African youth. And we appreciate the African youth. They're doing our best to take in their responsibilities, and they are ready to take an action as well. OPPRC, we are for this program for almost 10 years. We are empowering people, the youth, in education, peace building, entrepreneurship, and all this kind of process that can drive our youth. What is our role in this war is to prepare the next generation. Next generation, they need someone to drive them. We need to pave the way for them. Finally, we cannot do that by ourselves. We need our help. We need the help from everyone here. We need the idea. We need the critics. We need the opportunities. We need the advice, everything. Together we are strong. Together we can do it. Together we can succeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abdoulaye, and it's good to hear about your initiatives that you are doing, of course, to empower young women. I mean, young people, young women, youth in leadership as well. And I really love what Mr. Ezeko had said, saying youth, he can't wait for a time when youth will be invited in decision before the decision has been made. And it's very true. There is that aspect of we are consultants, more of their mind is made up and then all you have to do is come and chip in. But how can we co-create together and be a part of the process? Which is it's something that we really need to be a part of. And thank you so much to all the speakers who are here and everyone who has joined. Just wanting to see if there's anyone who has questions, any inputs. This is such a vibrant audience. I'm reading through the people who have joined, where they come from, and I'm like, I can't wait to hear them speak. And I don't see them speaking. I can see Eva Gerald is the founder and CEO of Tanzania Women and Youth Advisory Organization. If you have anything to share, it would be great to hear from anyone here. And with that, I also wanted to just let you guys know that the Africa Youth Empowerment Summit will be going on for some other days. And whilst we're still waiting on questions, Eva is here. Great.
Hello,
Eva, you're
hi
welcome.
everybody. Yeah, thank you. Congratulations guys for a nice I mean for this evening. I mean I thank God that I managed to participate, and I have been here since the beginning, and I got some points, and I think it's right time now for young people in Africa continent to unite together and to bring some changes instead of bright shading and making some competitions like what it's happening right now in social media. You can see some of young Africans competing with another nation, look like Tanzania and Kenya. They are making some competitions, which is totally wrong. It is the right time now to unite together, as you have seen. A new president of Congo, like he was crying. It means that there's a certain implication that we need to pay attention. Why this president is crying? It means he knows many things than us. So we need to think deep down and focus. What do we want in Africa to happen right now? We need to protect our things, So that is all I can share with you. And I think the next conversation. The next meeting, I think we're gonna have a great time and talk more. And I think I will participate more and share what I know. Thank you. Bye.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Eva. Just for everyone in the room, Eva is the founder and CEO of Tanzania Women and Youth Advisory Organization, TAWOYA, and she also serves as a member of parliament at the East African Youth Parliament. She shared some of her details in the chat as well. And it's really good to hear your passion to make sure that in the capability and be seen as you're a member of the East African Youth Parliament, you can really see the value in teaming up and getting together as one, not just as a region but even as a continent as a whole in Africa. And very valid points, and excited to have you join the other Africa Youth Empowerment Summit sessions. I'd like now to invite out if there are no any other questions, or feel free to raise your hand if you have any comments, any inputs, if you'd like to share with us what you do in order to empower people and young people in leadership. Well and good. You can write it down in the chat or you can raise your hand as well. But with that, I'd also like to invite Alfred, if you can share about the upcoming sessions that we'll be having in the summit.
Right, sure. Thank you very much, Jasmine. Am I audible? Can you confirm if I'm audible?
Yes, you are.
Right, sure. Awesome. Once again, I would like to say a very big thanks to you, Jasmine. That was an amazing presentation and facilitation of today's session. Also soon, day one evening session is drawing the curtains. And what a day it has been. Morning session brought us amazing persons from the governance space. Nadia Abdallah, we had Joshua Quay from the African Union, we had Honorable Daniel Obao, and we also had the moderator being Mr. Yasimba Atenga, and we had other very important persons also gracing that occasion for day one morning session. It was very, very amazing. I was thinking that day one was it. And then the one evening brought us amazing persons like Patience Manana, Mr. Olela Tony, Dennis Munene, and then Ezekiel Nzuki. Such a powerful conversation it has been right from the beginning till the end. Great transitions, and trust me, you cannot miss what is even yet to come. For day two tomorrow, it's going to be amazing as well. We are going to be delving straight into issues related to innovation, technology, and climate leadership for sustainable development. So we are going to be talking about digital transformation and youth innovation for economic growth. And we are going to be having persons from South Africa, from Namibia, from Ghana, from tech as well, tech aspect as well, sharing their convictions on it. And then we are also going to be talking about climate action, environmental leadership, and community transformation. And trust me, this is also going to be an amazing conversation you do not want to miss. So I encourage each and every one of you as well to be here for tomorrow's session, starting once again 8 a.m. GMT, quite early for those in West Africa, but it's 11 a.m. East African time, which is a moderate time. Tell your friends, share the links with them so that they are all a part of this conversation. And the evening session, again, still starts at 4 p.m. GMT and 7 p.m. East African time. I cannot wait to see you tomorrow. So thank you very, very much. And I hand it back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alfred. So if you can also share the social media handles for the Africa Youth Empowerment Summit, you can follow up there. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, I think we even have on TikTok, in LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook as well. So please feel free to follow up on that. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. If there are no any other questions, I think this comes to a close. But just a summary is, let us start. From everything I've picked up is let us start, let us not procrastinate, let us know our worth, This is given by patience, that we should know our worth, dissociate ourselves from sticky floors. Let us be bold enough is the example we get from Dennis Minene. Let us start is the example we get from Tony Olela. And we also have the fact um, of trying to be a part of the co-creation and not just coming to sit on the table and do away with tokenism. And that's something that we can pick up from Mr. Ezekiel. The links have been sent to the group. You can follow up on the YouTube on some of the events I had we were there in the morning, and you can keep on following up as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. You can say hi in the chat. So bye, and thank you. Thank you to our panelists, our speakers.
Thank you.
And
Bye-bye.
maybe we can take a group photo, right? December,
Yeah, you have to.
Great. If you're able to turn on your camera, please turn it on.
All right.
Yes, if you're able to turn on your camera, Tony, if you're able to turn on your cam, is everyone here? Yes. We could take a group photo. There we go. Amazing. Simba, you taking this? Okay. Alrighty. I think that is all. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Bye, Kapwani.
Bye bye.